Hello, Shanovny. I'm Slavik from Israel. Today we will talk about data-driven testing using BI. First of all, let's play a game. How do you know your users? Do you know? Just raise your hand. Do you know which operating systems they use? Which browsers? Which versions of browsers? iOS, Android. Define the version of this in the mobile devices, if it's iOS 11, 12. Okay, most of you that raise their hand probably using some analytical tool, such as BI. So let's take a look at on this example. This is our checkout form. We need to test this feature. It has some fields like first name, last name, optional, and mandatory. Each of us can test it on a different way. In some Chrome browsers, or maybe some different browsers, mobile apps. We have all, if we give this app for each one of you to test it, each one of you will test it in a different way, by some hunch. Okay. So all is most common. If we will test, sorry. So actually, do we need all these tests? Do we actually need to test in Chrome, in cross-browser test, in iOS, in Android? How we need to know where to test it? In what platforms we need to test it? This is, we can use BI to answer our questions. So what is BI? BI is actually business intelligence. To put it simply, it's like delivering the best and reliable information in the quick way to the right people. How we implement BI, and actually how can we do it? In every user interaction with our app, it can be a field like we saw in the example. It can be a radio button. Every interaction with our users, we cover it with BI. BI is a chunk of code we put on this event, and this event is sent to the servers. This is a small example of BI, what it contains. BI contains location, it can contain IP, the browser, the version of the browser. Every information that the user have is sent into the servers of the BI. We're starting to collect the data. It's what's called big data. After we collected the data, we're starting to query the data. We put this data in reports, and we can visualize what actually our user have, which browser they have, which operating systems. So making decisions. Trust on all the data we collect from our users. We can make decisions on the past, the present, and the future. How many of you, when you're testing some product, give some scenario, and when you encounter some bug, like thinking, how I get this to this point? What did I do? Well, using BI, you can track your actions step by step, like in a chronological order, and see how you get in some point. You can track in the past what your users do when they encounter some bug, when they if they use it correctly. what did for example, in the fields, which data they put, if it's a valid data, if it's not a valid data. How actually did they use your feature, your app? When you're testing some product, you're thinking like, probably they will like use it this way, but no. When you have a lot of users, you can understand each of them is using it in some specific way. So using BI, it's recording all the information from the users, and you can see actually how did they use it. In real time, BI help us to understand some future trends. For example, if we open some feature to production, if our users actually use it, if they see it, if they click on it, maybe yes, maybe no. And another decision is for the future. When we are seeing how our users are using some application, we can see when can we put more effort in it, maybe in UX and more in development. So why BI? I really love this phrase. As I said, everyone, if I give some app for everyone to test, every one of you will test it in a different way. So you are relying on yourself, on your opinion. Maybe my user will actually use it in this way. But when you are relying on data, you actually know how your users are using your app, your feature. So some terminology, KPI is key performance indicator. For example, in our express checkout form, number of hits can be a performance indicator. How many users successfully complete the checkout. We have a success rate. This is how many users click on the checkout, and this action was registered in the database. But in the other hand, we have an error rate. So somebody is clicked, but there are no record in the database. We will talk about success rate and error rate a little bit later. So getting BI into testing, how it can be done. Implementing BI is starting from the development feature in the beginning. Each action, each interaction with our users must be covered with BI. Any field, any page, just everything must be covered with the BI. We as the testers must test the BI itself, that the BI was implemented correctly and it sent, for example, the relevant data. If we were in some page, we see when the BI fired that the labels, the title in the BI is presented correctly. During the feature release, we are relying on monitoring. We'll talk about monitoring in the third-party applications. When we're relying on the BI, if you will see some drop or in the success rate, we will see something went wrong. And in the production, we as testers mostly testing some feature, and when it's in production, we kindly forget it and we're relying on automation. It's there. But with BI, it's end-to-end testing. So when the feature is in production, we have a lot of monitoring and we see how it performs in production. We see the success rate, how many people are using it, and the relevant data. So why I'm talking about it? We have three ways of getting it. maybe if you think, why are you telling us about it? We have a BI development in our company, but if you haven't such team, using Google Analytics is very easy to do it. If you see this code, it's like really messy, but stay with me. When you're registered to Google Analytics, they give you like a tracking code. This tracking code is just need to like put it in this parameter there, and from this point you're ready to go. You're taking this chunk of code, putting it in the head of your program, and that's it. You are starting collecting data on about your users. Let's see this example. We're adding some button, this button, and what this button should do is you should click on it. So how will you know if your user are clicking it or not? Maybe we will think, okay, I will see it in the database. But if the purpose of this button like open some pop-up and there are no any change in the database, how will you know if this button works on IE on special version or not? Well, using BI, we're adding some listener to this button. This is the code of Google Analytics, and once you add it, that's it. When a user clicking on this button, this event of BI is sending to Google Analytics, and you can see all the information about this user, his IP, his location, what browser that he use, what operating system, etc. And many of you think like, wait, okay, so you put some BI in your product, but it's like an egg and a chicken. How you can collect a data when the feature is not in production? So this is correct. We are using A/B testing. When we are implementing BI to start collecting data and see some user trends and user behavior, we are opening this feature with the BI for some monitoring countries to see just how people are using the app. So we saw with the button some event tracking, but Google Analytics provides us a lot of more events. This can be page tracking. For example, if I was in the home page and I click on store, the navigation between the pages can be tracked. Event tracking, so it's a button, it's a field. Social interactions, it can be LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. User timing, it's very important. We can see the times for every page load. For example, if we had some page that was loaded for 500 milliseconds and starting to load for 1 second, we will see it every page, every action with interaction with user, we can get time. And error tracking, it's going to be implemented in the server or in the client. Every server or client error will send also event to the Google Analytics server. So let's see this example. How can it help us on the actual testing? If you're using, for example, mobile devices, and you should test this app on mobile, which mobile devices will you use? Okay, most of you say, okay, if my app is using by United States, I will use iPhone. Okay, but when you're using BI, you actually know which devices. Like we have the top 10 here. You can or buy them or use some virtual machines, but you actually know which devices are your user are used. Another example is the user flows. It's from the page tracking event. You think, okay, I have my app, and probably when I have a store, user coming to my homepage and picking some product and navigating to the store. This is again probably from the store, but you see most of users didn't do the flow as you think. When you are looking on the page tracking events, you can be as most close to your users. You can really understand how they react on your platform. Another quote, it's not only the companies are blind, we are blind. If we are not using data and not using the approach as our customers, we are doing something wrong. So, pros and cons about Google Analytics. It's free. So when it's free, it's very good. So it's like open source. You can integrate it immediately in your app. It's have a big community. Every question you can find like in YouTube and forums and you name it. There is information about how you use Google Analytics. Fast integration. We talk about it. Just we took in this chunk of code, put it in the header, and that's it. And custom reports. There are a lot of reports there that you can use. It's as we saw, it's page tracking. It's mobile devices. It can be how much money users spent on your app. You name it. But at some point, Google are not so stupid. From some point of traffic, they started to ask you the premium account. This account is costing $150,000 a year. At this point, many of small companies that use analytics and understand his ability are moving to internal BI tools. Okay, and the custom report, because Google is collecting a lot of data, it can be frustrating. You can see the report and it presents so much data, you can get lost. If you're using just the most common devices somebody will use in your app, they're presenting much more. So if you are looking for something like basic, it can be really frustrating. So many companies are moving to internal tools. In this case, I will talk about our company Wix and our internal tools. So we have something that called BI catalog. Well, all what this do is put all the BI events in one place. The name is not relevant. We are in one app are presenting all the events that in the system, and for each event we are presenting the success rate and the error rate. So I can immediately see for each event how many users are using it, and if there are some errors. If there are some errors, I can query them. I will talk about it a little bit later, and see what caused this problem. About a bit User Explorer, we have an historic and real-time options. All what this do is we can put some ID on our customer and see in chronological order what he's done in the system. This is help us to debug some bugs if a user has encountered some error, and we think, okay, what he's done, like what his steps in the system. We can see it in chronological order. And as I talk about error rate, when we see like some error rate, I need to understand what caused the error. using simple query, we are using here PrestoDB, where it's in this query we can actually put dates, what the event, and filter by it can be success rate, it can be error rate, and the query will give us all the information about, for example, I can see if we have some error in IE Explorer IE in version 10, I can filter here and see what it gives me, I doesn't need to check actually in my manual testing or the browser on all the versions. If I encounter some specific error, I will see it here. Why? I can actually see how many users are using some mobile device with, it can be like some Chinese mobile device, and it can be like 10 customers of all our users. So it's not so relevant. I will not put an effort and open a bug for some dev that to fix it. So about a little about BI, it's flexible and scalable. We have a really very strong integration to third-party applications. We can see user flows. Google Analytics provides some user trend. For example, I can't see what exactly a single user did in our app, in my app. But with internal tools, I can just look on a single user and not the trends. And time frames. Google Analytics is not working with minutes. It can give me a trend of how many, so for some hours or half a day. In internal tools, we can look by minutes. The problem is it takes time to develop, and time is money, as we know. Another strong thing is the integration to third-party applications. This gives us a lot of strength and in our testing. A little about anomaly detection. This is actually my favorite tool. Somebody heard about anomaly detection tool? No one. Okay, so anomaly detection is like a self-learning tool. For example, if you have users on Sunday in US, and you see your graph is growing down, it's probably we think, okay, do we have some issue in production? If our users are like not using our app, what's get wrong? But anomaly detection is a self-learning tool that know that, for example, in Sunday, users are in vacation and will not use our app. So it's okay, it's not a bug. He will not send us some alert to tell us something went wrong. But if it's like on Monday and Anodot is used to for some threshold in the graph, and he sees some drop in the graph, he will automatically send us an alert that something went wrong. Another tool is Tabelum. It just gives us beautiful reports. Here we have an example of all the mobile devices used in our systems. This is just help me to understand which mobile devices I need to buy or buy VMs or use VMs. For example, it can be the top 5, the country that these mobile devices come from, the width, the operating system, just everything, just really nice report. We are using Slack. Just because Slack have integration to a lot of another TPAs. This is an example. This is our graph, and we see that the success rate was good and go to 0. So automatically the system recognizes something went wrong. It's not supposed to be like that. The dev teams automatically starting to look on the our apps what get wrong, if somebody like push code to production or something or new experiment was open. We are committing a rollback or closing the new feature and fix and back to normal. As you can see, the timeframes are really low because the Anodot is sending really fast. It recognizes there is some issue. He's pushed a Slack message and we recognize something went wrong and fixing it immediately. Another tools we have New Relic. It's BI based on server side, Grafana, TrackJS, and Central.io. All these are TPAs. You just need to understand what actually you need in your system. It can be a server side, it can be a client. Each of them give some benefits and benefits, and some of them are not so good. But you must integrate with one of them and start using this app to understand how good it is and how many benefits there is from collecting this BI. So BI focus on the right things to do. When you're using the data you're collecting from users, your test scenarios in the automation will be as close for the users. You will be focused on the right things to be focused on the time frames. You will not spend time in testing for not relevant things. Thank you.
Question, please.
Thanks for the speech. You talked about Google Analytics and another BI tools, and I have a question: are they free?
There was Google Analytics, the internal tool, and the third-party applications that they collecting the data from the BI server were integrate, for example, the Anodot to the BI server. So all the graphs are rely on BI, on the events from the BI we are collecting.
Hello, thank you for your speech. I have a question regarding general data protection regulation. As you maybe know, in Europe, this rule is started to work, and users' personal data is protected, and you prohibited to collect users' data to avoid identification of users. So what about collecting of user data and probably leaking of users' data? What about these threats?
Okay. About GDPR. We are not collecting fields like username and passwords. About GDPR, a user can ask for his information. We're actually having, and he can ask for delete this information. Only those two choices, so we're actually not doing something wrong.
Hi, thank you for your speech. My name is Igor Samukish. I'm working as a technical test analyst in Visma Labs and also as a test consultant. And my question is, you mentioned user common flow in Google Analytics and probably in some other tools as well. And I'm curious about some common user scenarios that I can take out of that information.
Yeah.
Can I grab it, and is it somewhere a very fancy way to take it for using in other type of testing, for example, in performance and so on? Thank you.
Okay, so here in user common flow in Google Analytics, you can see how many users are in your, for example, come to your homepage. From that, you can see how many are continued, for example, from a homepage to other pages. And the red arrow, if you like click on it, you will see the drop. How many users are not continued from this page to other page.
I assume it also show a user abandonment from each of page.
Yeah, the red arrow is the user abandoned.
Nice, thanks.
Hi, thank you for the speech. My question is, does Google Analytics track the events in real time, or there are some time differences, like half an hour or an hour? Because I have now in test a story about Google Analytics, and I think it has some differences.
Yes, it has some. As I mentioned in the internal and Google Analytics, the time frames. Google Analytics have something like a half day, it can be, until you see the trend. It's not a single user, it's the user trend. Because of this issue, many of companies are moving towards some internal tool. So you can see exactly for a single user, and it sends immediately.
Okay.
Any questions? No?
Thank you for your speech. I wanted to ask if it's a scalable solution. So was it written only for your application, or it can be used for other applications and for big systems, for example?
Okay, it's used for web applications, but actually BI can be implemented on the server side. So most of the apps are using in web applications platform, yes.
I think we don't have questions, yes. So, thank you.
Thank you.